Good evening, Seattle. How are you? This is the penultimate night of this year's Noir City Film Festival, and it occurs to me that I've found it up here on stage every one of these nights, and never occurred to me that somebody might have just walked in off the street and actually had no idea what was going on here. They just wanted to see a movie. Because I've never actually formally introduced myself. I'm looking out here and seeing a lot of familiar faces, and I obviously don't need to do that for you folks. But I am Eddie Muller, the founder and president of the Film Noir Foundation, under whose auspices the Noir City Film Festival is presented. And now also the host of Turner Classic Movies Noir Alley, which will be back on the air after TCM, paid homage to the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in February with their 31 Days of Oscar, even though February doesn't have 31 days. Whatever, these things happen. I'll be back this Sunday, right? No, next Sunday. Next Sunday. One of these Sundays I'll be back on the air on TCM. And then the week after that, I'll be on Saturday nights at 9 p.m. on Saturday nights West Coast time. From then on, responding to all those people who were criticizing us for having Noir on a Sunday morning. And I said, why it works perfectly on a Sunday morning, right? It's all about sinners and what happens to sinners. It's like, it's perfect for Sunday morning. Why go to church? You can get your gospel and your sermons right here on Noir Alley and TCM, right? Having said that, I am reminded by the fabulous Darl Sparks, who has been assisting you out there at the merchandise table, my very stylish right hand, that the last 2 days here we're going to do a little donation drive for the Film Noir Foundation. You guys have been great buying merchandise and everything, but we're going to do a little pitch for the donation drive. If you don't know about what the Film Noir Foundation does, we raise money to rescue and restore at-risk films, which we are hoping to do 2 of those in 2018. And we're going to do, anybody who donates to the Film Noir Foundation, you will be randomly entered in a drawing to win. This is fantastic. The prize is from Fantagraphics, right here in Seattle. Fantagraphics, a collection of comic book stories from one of my personal favorites, Johnny Craig, a book called Fall Guy for Murder. If you don't know about Johnny Craig, he was like the 1950s comic book equivalent of James M. Cain, working for EC Comics back then, and the collection is spectacular. You can win that if you make a donation to the Film Noir Foundation. Okay, now I'm going to bring Carly, the fabulous Carly from the Egyptian Theater, back up here on stage, because we are going to do Shadow Play, Noir City Trivia, and your prize tonight. This is something, okay? I cannot resist this line. If you ever wanted to sleep with Loretta Young, now is your chance, because this is a Loretta Young pillow. So here is your chance to go to bed with Loretta Young. You cannot expect me to resist a setup like that. Okay. And the winner of this pillow, to inflame my imagination, is Darlene Johnson. Okay, Darlene, come up here. You must be in the house, Darlene, right? Obviously, see, everybody knows everybody here in Noir City. It's fantastic. Okay, Darlene, before you even get to the microphone in your hand, I know that for a long time you've harbored fantasies about Loretta Young. So, here you go. One of the most beautiful women in the history of Hollywood. Yes, you actually get your own Loretta Young pillow. There you go. Sweet dreams, Darlene. Thank you, Darlene. And now you get to hear the introduction to this movie, which will totally change your opinion of all of it, everything I just said. Okay. The Accused is a movie that I have wanted to show for a long time, and I'm very, very happy that the Library of Congress has done a restoration of this film. That's what you are about to see, a print from the Library of Congress. You know that all festival long I have been touting the contributions of women behind the camera to film noir. There was a fabulous thing I saw on social media the other day where somebody made a note saying, I really appreciate that Eddie Muller is giving credit to the contributions of women to film noir, and somebody immediately responded saying, what would film noir be without those fabulous dames, and how sexy and provocative and wonderful they are? And the woman who made the initial post said, interesting that you think we were referring to the women in front of the camera. Eddie's actually talking about the women behind the camera. And The Accused is based on a book by an author named June Truesdell. And the screenplay is by a very accomplished writer named Ketty Frings, Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright, novelist and playwright, who had quite a run in Hollywood during the 1940s. The movie is directed by William Dieterle, an actor turned director, another one of those European emigres, but one that you don't really hear about in the same sentences with Fritz Lang and Otto Preminger and Robert Siodmak. But William Dieterle was quite a successful A-list director in Hollywood, and to me, this is actually one of his better films in the late 1940s. He had a tremendous career in the 1930s, you know, during Hunchback of Notre Dame and all of these various things that established him as an A-list director. But I'm quite partial to The Accused. And one of the things that makes this movie kind of exceptional to me, as I'm sure if you've seen me do these intros for a number of years, you know I'm always looking for the weird intersection where real life crosses with the fictions that they put on the screen. And so in the case of this movie, it was always fascinating to me that the story of Loretta Young, who was a major, major star in her day, one of the most beautiful women in Hollywood. She had just won an Oscar before this for The Farmer's Daughter. And it was a little known, it was kind of a secret in her life that she had an illegitimate daughter. And over time, people became very suspicious that the father of this illegitimate daughter was Clark Gable. Because Judith, her daughter, looked very much like Clark Gable. Not to be funny about it, but Clark Gable had a very distinguishing characteristic, his ears, right, that really protruded. And Judith had these same ears, and she looked exactly like Loretta Young and Clark Gable, right? And people said, wow, that's kind of interesting. And this became a hot topic of conversation in Hollywood because Loretta Young and Clark Gable had made a film together. And later in her life, Loretta Young addressed this and said, well, we had an affair, okay? And she like owned up to this. But then later in her life, she said it actually was not a consensual thing. And it's kind of fascinating realizing that, to watch her make this movie, which must have been a very intense experience for her, because this is a movie about a woman who is the victim of an attempted rape, and what she does to fight back. And it kind of fascinates me to realize what Loretta Young had actually gone through in her decision to make this movie after winning an Oscar and making a movie that we now consider to be film noir. But she was sort of going out on a personal limb emotionally, making this movie, which I think makes it very, very fascinating and also makes it very timely. considering what's happening with the Me Too movement and all of this right now. That's one of the things that amazes me about these older films, is that the good ones are incredibly timeless, and the issues that they address, and the seriousness and the adult tone they take addressing these issues. This is the second movie in this festival that features Robert Cummings, who I never liked when I was growing up, and he has really grown on me, and I've come to really appreciate him as a performer. And if you were here last night and saw I Walk Alone, I thought that Wendell Corey actually gives the best performance in I Walk Alone, and he gives one equally great in the movie tonight. So I'm just really, really glad that we're able to show this film. It was a movie that had slipped through the cracks because it's a Paramount movie from 1949, and a lot of those movies are at risk because the entire Paramount library from a certain date in 1949 and previous was sold to Universal Pictures, and there was a segment of that library, about a 6-month segment, that's sort of in limbo. And so I was very glad that Paramount found the original negative of this, and because it was questionable as to where it actually belonged, they sent it to the Library of Congress, and they performed the restoration on the film so that we can see it today. That's how it's supposed to work. So, having said all that, please enjoy The Accused.